too many times, and this is just human nature, is we dwell on our losses, we think about it, we dwell on it, and then when we actually have wins, we brush it off to the side real quickly, right? And it should be flipped. We should dwell on our wins more than we dwell on our losses.
Welcome to the Conscious Investor. Let's get started. Conscious Investor, welcome back. I am so grateful to have you here as always. And you know what? Remember that we need to invest in all areas of our life, right? We need to invest personally. We need to invest professionally. We also need to invest in really good services. And so if you haven't already checked out Mode Wealth for tax planning and other services, you need to make it a point to, especially as you're coming to the year end, really not the ideal time. You're not going to get the best, all the advantages and everything as if you had started, early in the year. So whenever you're listening to this, it's always the best time to get started working with a boutique planning company that will help service all of your financial needs so that everybody's speaking the same language and you're maximizing every element of your life. Well, we are joined today by someone that I really respect. I met Del in person. I already knew him, but I met him in person for the second time, but actually it's the first time I actually spoke with you, Del, at Rod Cleef's recent boot camp. And it was absolutely extraordinary. And I knew, I'm like, Del, I got to have you on the podcast. So Del, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, I have a question for you because I said we just have to hit record because I know this is going to be a great conversation and we're going to have been like, FOMO, we should have hit record. So I specifically did not ask you this question, before we hit record. And that was, we were talking about reading and you have a book that you've recently published and everything. We're going to talk about that in a second. But what stood out to me was you and I both have a shared love of reading. You said you read a book a week. My mind's blown because I'm did 5-week book and networking club, 5 weeks. I can do that. So let me ask you, what are some of your favorite books? What are you gaining from those books? And why are you so passionate about reading?
Oh, so much to unpack there. Yeah, I am a huge reader. I love reading. I don't know if it's genetics. I know my grandmother was a big reader as well. But I think for me, the love came really realizing it was kind of a hack at life where people would put their life's work in a book and you could just download that and put it in your brain. And once I learned that, I couldn't get enough. It was like a feast at the table. I wanted to feast on knowledge. And so I started reading and today I finish one book a week. And a little secret that can help you, and this is what helped me to learn how to do this, is read a book on speed reading. Reading a book on how to read, it'll change your life. It's the craziest thing. And so there's some tactics and strategies that go along with that. But truth be told, about any given moment, I'm in probably 2 or 3 books at a time, but I finish a book a week. And so many people say, I just can't do multiple books at the same time. And it's hogwash. It's not true, because I always ask the question, well, do you watch multiple TV shows at the same time? Are you able to watch Seinfeld and Big Bang Theory and still follow along with storylines? Yeah, of course you are. And so the same thing rings true with books. You can absolutely read more than one book at a time.
I love that. My husband and I have had that conversation because, like you, I usually have a few books going at the same time. And he's like, I'm a 1-book person, one at a time. And I said, but it's like a conversation. I'm having a conversation with this person, with this author on this topic. Is no different than going to a networking event and, I met Del, I'm talking to Del and we're talking about, high performance coaching and how that's changed lives. And now I'm talking to my other friends about something different. It's just a different conversation. That's all it is. I like your analogy with the different TV shows and everything. That's really great.
Yeah, it's easier. I think we put these glass ceilings on ourselves. We put ourselves in this little box of what we can and can't do. But our brain is such an amazing organ, device, computer. It can do a lot more things than we give it credit for.
Definitely. Well, okay. I was going to ask this at the end, but we're talking about books, and you have a book. And so tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I wrote a book called The High Performance Playbook, Win at the Game of Life. And it's a very simple book. It's plays. It's not theory. It's not a bunch of stories. It's things that you can actually implement in your life to be a high performer. It focuses on productivity. It focuses on health. It focuses on mindset. It focuses on how to define your purpose. It focuses on how to create harmony in your life, not work-life balance, but how to create harmony in your life, and so much more stuff. So it's a personal development book where I've really curated things that I've worked on over the last 20 years, the things that I teach my clients as well, and I put it in a very simple book.
Okay. Conscious investor, you caught that. I know you did. You've been listening to the podcast long enough. I know you caught that when he said harmony, not balance, because that's something that we've spoken about so often on the podcast is that we don't have to have this balance. That's just it's just not even something we need to be striving for. But that harmony, that synergy where everything's feeding and nurturing each other, that's where our sweet spot is. So I had to point that out. Also, if you're listening and you're not watching over on YouTube, but you're listening to this, I just want you to go back, check it out over on the YouTube channel because he's holding up a copy of the book. So yes, we'll have a link in the show notes, but if you want to see the copy, the front cover, you can go back and watch it on YouTube. So, Del, what was it? I'm just curious. What was the impetus for writing a book?
I think when you love to read, at some point you want to write one yourself. Mm-hmm. I absolutely, like I said, I love reading, and over time you start curating all these different ideas and thoughts, and you just want to put that together in a very simple format. I think everybody really has a book in them, and at some point you got to let that out. But not everybody does. It's one of those, one day I'll do this, one day I'll write a book. I think everybody says that. And I think even for myself, that was a challenge of, as a high performance coach, I want to do high performance things. I want to lead a high performance life. And I don't like those some days, those one days that, I don't like those things. And so I just got very ornery with my goals and said, hey, I'm going to write this book. And so I had to carve out time. I had to plan for it. It was in the calendar. If it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist. So I carved out time to purposely write this book.
I tell my husband that all the time. If it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. It's almost like I'm hearing this echo of me. Man, Dad, no wonder we jive. It's hilarious. So I know we have another topic that's like super great. So, if you're not into writing a book, these principles actually apply to anything that you are wanting to achieve in your life, setting goals, being clear about it, making time for it. It doesn't matter if it's writing a book, regaining your health, or rekindling a relationship in your life. All of these things take conscious movement towards them. So if you're not writing a book, this still has application in your life. So hear that. I'm going to ask one final question on this whole book concept. And then we're going to go into the mindset of success, which is just absolutely amazing. And I can't wait to dive into that. However, one thing that so many people say is, I don't want to write a book. I don't want to have a podcast or do all of these things because everyone else is already doing it. Why would I have zero to add to it? It's all being said out there. Now, I have my own position on this, which I have a feeling you're going to echo what my sentiments, but I'd love for, the conscious investor right now to be able to hear, how did you overcome that limitation in your mind, if it was one?
It goes back with the word I've already been saying on the podcast, and that's curation. We're a curator. No matter what, if we think this crazy thought, someone has already thought it. For example, let's say purple blueberry muffins. I bet you, I'm just making something up, but if you were to Google purple blueberry muffins, I bet you somebody has made purple blueberry muffins sometime.
It's going to auto-populate probably even.
It probably will, right? There's really nothing that's new that's out there. However, what we do is we're curators of good ideas. And so maybe it doesn't, you go to like a museum, they curate great artwork, right? The Louvre in Paris, for example, they've done a fantastic job of putting certain artists in there and have different wings of certain things. And that's why we love the Louvre. But there might be another museum that we like even better than the Louvre because they've only done modern art and they just focus on just modern art. And we love how they've curated the process as well. And so there's people out there, it's the same thing. They love your curations and what you've put together and what you've bunched together. And so that's why we write, that's why we create, because we're curators at the end of the day. We're not inventing anything new. We're just curating ideas. We like, for example, Julie might be curating mindset, which is different, and real estate and putting them together. And someone's going to say, man, I love real estate and mindset. I love listening to Julie's stuff. And, the same thing for whatever our podcast listeners are doing is maybe it's dentistry and mindset. And maybe they just absolutely love that. So you're a curator, you're putting these ideas together. And that's why you should do it, because at the end of the day, we're not creating anything new. We're just putting ideas together.
So that means, conscious investor, that as silly as it may sound, that post that you put over onto a social media platform with your perspective and your opinion is very critical. It's a critical element in the curation in the world of ideas. And so, sometimes we might hesitate to share an idea that you have because you might limit yourself and say, oh, somebody else already said it. My best friend just said it over there. I mean, but you're saying it in your own way. So make sure that you are adding to that curation in the world. It's very critical. I love that.
Very much so. And it's about perspective. Like you said, it's, your perspective on a situation is different. And they may resonate with that more, right? If I read a book and you read a book, we might get two different meanings from it. And so when you share your meaning, it might allow someone to get their epiphany moment too.
By the way, that's a great opportunity. If you are not in the 5-week book and networking club, you need to join, because that's exactly why, as we read the same content and we discuss that content from our perspectives and our experiences, different stages of life, all of that, it brings out so much more to the book. It's a really powerful opportunity. Dang. That was, by the way, everyone, sweet conscious investor, that was just a matter of an appetizer right there, because we're going to shift gears now. And let's go ahead. Let's dive into just some basics. And I'm going to just be honest. I have neglected you, conscious investor. I haven't gone back to this, foundational element in a long time. And so I'm so grateful to have you on here, Del, just to really gird up our foundation again, especially, when this comes out, whenever you're listening to it, it's going to be great. Right now, it's going to hit before the end of the year as people are launching into the new year. But if you're picking this up, at any point in the year, this is just going to just rekindle and revamp what you are aiming for. So let's dive in. What do we need to know about just some foundational, mindset of success?
Yeah, I think mindset is everything. As a high performance coach, mindset is something I focus on quite a bit. And my clients come from all different types of backgrounds, from dentists to real estate investors to artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, you name it, but the basics remain the same. And, I love this idea. There's this equation of, success is 80% mindset, 20% mechanics, right? So I always think 20% mechanics is what your job is. So anybody can be an athlete, entrepreneur, real estate investor. But what remains the same is the 80%. We got to focus on the 80%. It's the mindset. It's that growth mindset that we have. It's focusing on our goals and moving forward. And so in the book, I talk about energy, courage, productivity, influence, the mindset pieces. And I'm an open book. What do you want to know, Julie?
Well, What are some of the major stumbling blocks? You do work with a broad spectrum of clients. And, what I've noticed with my clients is everyone kind of enters in a very similar fashion. And so maybe if you could tell us, and maybe if we can help a conscious investor identify maybe their entry point, right? Like, how would they identify that this is what they need, that sure, I've been listening to mindset episodes and I read some really good books, fairly often, but how else can they gird up that mindset element in their life?
Great question right there. And I'll give you an example, a little story. So last time we spoke or we saw each other, I was on stage, or no, you were just coming off a stage, but a little background on myself. I used to speak a lot on stages all across the United States, Canada. By the age of 34 years old, I flew over 1,000,000 miles. Like, that's how often I was speaking somewhere.
Gosh. I'm exhausted for you, by the way, on that.
Yeah, I never want to get on an airplane again, by the way. So anyways, going back to what I was saying, and on stage, there was one question I would always ask, and I would say, if I gave you $1,000,000, what would you do with it? And it was a loaded question on my part, because I knew people in the crowd would shout out different things. And I knew someone would say, I would travel. And that was my cue. I'd jump in, I'd say, okay, perfect. Where do you want to travel to? And they would just always look at me like a deer in headlights. Like, they never thought past that word travel, right? And so I would joke. I said, well, you travel to my seminar. Do you feel your life is fulfilled? And I get a little nervous chuckle from them. But the teaching lesson was, the number one reason why people don't get what they want is because they don't know what they want. They never defined it for themselves. They've been general with their goals, so therefore they've got general results. And so when we're talking about getting back to basics, one of the most important things, and it may sound a little frou-frou-y, but there's some magic behind it, is creating a vision board. It's getting your goals, define exactly what it is that you want. Don't say I want to travel. Say I want to travel to Italy and see the Colosseum. I want to go to I want to go to Machu Picchu and experience the ruins. You get very detailed. I want a house. Okay, where do you want the house to be? Well, I want it in the mountains. Which mountains? Rocky Mountains, Appalachians. Where do you want to go? I want to go Rocky Mountains. Okay, which state? Where's it going to be? How many cars are in the driveway? What's the color of the car? That's the level of detail that I would say that's where you start with. What is it that you want? If, as a coach, what I would ask is, if I waved the magic wand, what would you want? What would you want from life? Without limitations, what do you want? And that way we start crafting the life that we want. Stephen Covey said it best: begin with the end in mind. So what is that end? What is it that we exactly want? And then once we know what we want, we can start creating that path on how to get there.
Gosh, I love it. I seriously just want to move everything and just show the vision board that we have, because it's that I have literally just to the side of my computer, and it's pretty large, but it's very deliberate. And the pictures are very significant and meaningful to me, including places that we want to go. The kids, I want a place down in Mexico in the Caribbean. I need that. The snowbird does. And it's so critical. And as you said, most people don't think beyond that moment. Most people are exactly that: travel, or maybe this is going to resonate with you, conscious investor. I want a good relationship with my partner. I want people to respect me in the community. But what does that actually look like? What does it look like if you have a relationship where you have, harmony, love, respect, you feel cherished, honored, all of those things in a relationship? What does that actually look like to you? Have you thought it out? So I love that you're saying, hey, carry the idea all the way through to the finish line.
Get into the details for sure. The magic is in the details of it, because when we're general with our goals, we get general results. And Julie, you also brought up a good point too. My husband and I, we've talked about this, and sometimes where I see vision boards go wrong, if you will, is that maybe one partner only does the vision board and they don't include the other person into the vision board. Right. and so one of the challenges that I would send to anyone listening to this is, take time to sit down with your partner and say, honey, what is it that we want? What's the life that we want to build together? What's our intention behind this? they might share stuff that you were not aware of. And it makes for a great communication exercise too, and say, hey, honey, we're building this amazing life together. What do you want? This is what I want. Let's talk it through. Let's set some goals.
That is really key. If you want to sustain a relationship and have it really a meaningful, fulfilled relationship for everyone involved, like it's very critical to do this. As interesting, seriously, so interesting that you said that, because I was going to say, and what do you do if now this does happen where we will have couples and one of them is going to be on fire and they're drinking the Kool-Aid and they're just growing exponentially and they're just, just devouring all the content and they're just transforming. I always think of that board game, Sorry. And if you've played Sorry, you hit the little tail of this one section on the board and it allows you to go like 5 spaces instantly. And a lot of times when people enter into this space, they start working with a high performance coach like Dell. Then, it's like this transformation is expedited because when you're working with someone who's skilled, that is what happens. And if you're not doing that together, what would you say to some of those where maybe somebody signed up, they're in a program, they're receiving high performance coaching, and now they're feeling a disconnect with their spouse or partner?
It's tough. It really is tough. I see this quite a bit, believe it or not. And, I've experienced it in my own life as well. Some people are wired just a little bit differently. They love personal development. They thrive on it and they're constantly trying to get better. And then sometimes their spouse, they're frustrated because they're not going at the same rate that we are, right? We see it happen quite a bit. And there's a really good book called The Gap in the Gain. And it kind of speaks on this same concept where you have the gap is like, I want to be, let's say I'm at a scale of 1 to 30, right? I want to hit 30, right? And I only achieved 20. And you get down on yourself because you didn't hit 30. Like you're measuring yourself up against the potential of what you actually wanted. But the reality is you came from 1 to 20. That's great growth, right? We're just kind of using a funny scale here.
Yes, that works.
But if you measure yourself like with the gain, hey, I gained up to 20, you give yourself a little more grace in your life and say, hey, I've actually come pretty far. I went from 1 to 20. That's amazing. So you're gauging yourself against the gain. And we have to do that as well with our kids, with our spouse, our partners, because they may not live up to the potential and the level that we see for them. And if we do that, we're going to let ourselves down and be angry and have grudges or whatever it might be. But if you actually say, hey, look how far they've come, and you measure them against their own gain, then you can celebrate that more and you can give them a little bit more grace and you have a happier relationship as well.
That's really fantastic. I love that. And that's on the reading list. That book has come across my plate. And now this is the 3rd time. 3 is my favorite number. 3rd time in the last week and a half. So I'm like, maybe a little bit of a sign that book needs to get added to the book and networking club. I'm going to add something on here as I look over at my vision board. I actually have a vision and celebration board and it's split. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. My concept is celebrating that gain. Speaking to that specifically is what have I accomplished? What are the little mile markers along as I'm striving for this that I can visually see that I'm making that progress?
I am a huge proponent of celebrating wins, small or big. And the reason for that is it creates momentum in our lives. Too many times, and this is just human nature, is we dwell on our losses, we think about it, we dwell on it, and then when we actually have wins, we brush it off to the side real quickly, right? And it should be flipped. We should dwell on our wins more than we dwell on our losses. And so having a celebration board or having some way to acknowledge of, hey, this is the gain I've achieved, it creates that momentum. So anytime that you win, create some type of reward along with it, because that'll create more momentum in your life. Because if you're dwelling on the losses, it's going to be a stumbling block. It's not going to get you where you want to go.
Definitely. Definitely. And I call it conscious investor. You've heard me say, gather the evidence. What is the evidence saying? And just curating that, going back to the whole curation thing is like, what are we curating that's leading into our vision and leading us towards that? And sometimes we have those days and we just need to go. I have on my iPhone, I have a little album of, screenshots, pictures, whatever. It might be messages, direct messages from you, conscious investor. It might be a screenshot of something someone shared on social media or email, whatever it is. I don't have a picture of you and I, Del. That would have really, I'm going to have to take a screenshot and add that into that because it's a great conversation. So let's go back into a little more of those foundations, right? So we know that it is mindset, like everything that we need to achieve in life is all between our ears. What are some other areas like within that mindset? We talked about like going deeper, actually really defining what it is that you are after. What are some of those other, areas where that spread where people need to grow without realizing it?
I would first start with I am statements, positive affirmations. I am. And again, as hokey as it sounds, we're programming our subconscious to believe certain things. As a coach, one of the things I listen for is when someone says, I'm not good at public speaking. Well, how do you know? Like we're speaking right now, you're doing a great job talking, but you're programming yourself to say, I am not a good public speaker. Therefore, yeah, that's what you're going to program yourself for. And so one of the basic things that you can do, anyone that's listening to this, is to create 30 I am statements about yourself, present tense, positive statements. I am a great father. I am a great husband. I am a great brother. I'm a great son. I'm a great mother. Things like that. I am a world-class traveler. You program those things. I am wealthy. Now, the key is to add it in present tense. Because if you say, I am a future multimillionaire, it's always in the future. You're always grasping after it. You're never having, it's always out of your reach, but you want to program yourself to believe those things. So when you start believing that I am a multi-million-dollar real estate investor, you start believing that becomes a part of your character. And when you start believing that and doing the things that a multi-millionaire real estate investor does, you start getting the results that a multi-millionaire real estate investor gets, right? So creating I am statements are huge. And so again, present tense, it's important to do. And the reason for those statements is this. Anytime we get out of our comfort zone, anytime we get on a podcast, anytime we step on stage, anytime we go out there and try something new, we have this little voice in our head that says, who are you to be doing this? Who are you to be getting on stage? Who are you to write that book? Who are you to do this? And if we let that negative voice creep into our head just a little bit too much, it's going to limit our possibilities. We're not going to perform at our best. However, here's what I do before I jump on the podcast, jump on stage, or get out of my comfort zone. What I do is I repeat those 30 I am statements back. And I say it with energy. I say it with passion. And as I do that, it actually squeezes that little negative voice out. You don't hear them anymore because I've just replaced it with I am great. I am wonderful. I am, successful. I am this, that, or the other. And I just squeeze that little negative voice out. It pumps me up, gets my mindset right. And so for anyone that wants to get their mindset right, if you feel a little out of whack and you need to feel recalibrated, go to your I am statements.
Okay. How do you practically you personally and clients of yours practically? So I have mine. I actually write mine. I don't have 30. So I want to know if there's a magic with 30, but I have mine that I write almost every morning. And I believe in the power of actually writing them out. And if you look in this journal, it's really probably silly because you're writing the same thing every day. And I actually have changed some of those, tweaked them throughout time and everything. But there's this trigger, this connection between our brain and the tactile sensation of writing. So I actually use a pencil very deliberately because it has more drag, which creates a connection between our brain and just helps, stimulate more brain activity around that. So, with that, I'm a writer. I love to write it down. However, what if someone's like, oh, gosh, I know my husband does not want to write the exact same thing every single day. So what are some strategies for people? And going back also, is 30 the magic number?
30, I like to say 3 is the magic number. 3 is also my favorite number too.
Nice.
My full name is Delbert Glenn Denney the third, and so 3 has always been the magic number for myself as well. 30 is just I want to inundate. I want to have as much positivity as I can cram into somebody, right? So that's why 30. It could be 20, it could be 50, it doesn't matter, but 30 is a really good base for your I am statements. I love that you write them out. I think everyone should write out their I am statements as well. And then to add to that, a little trick of the trade that I would have is, I don't know where my phone is, but I would show you where my phone is. I recorded my I am statements using GarageBand. So Apple Computer has a GarageBand. You can do it. So I recorded myself saying my 30 I am statements. I put a little instrumental music underneath of it. And then I repeated those 30 I am statements 5 times. So it creates a track that's maybe 4 or 5 minutes long. And anytime I'm in the car or I'm going to a meeting or having that lunch meeting or whatever it is, it's really easy for me to say, I don't want to say it out loud, but the virtual assistant that is on the iPhone, I say, hey, play my I am statements. It'll play it right there. It'll play it on CarPlay or whatever. And it's just an easy way for me to jump into my I am statements. As I'm driving, it'll be tough to write down the I am statements, but it's easy to listen to them. And then also the key is to repeat it back with emotion. That's the key of repeating it back with emotion and energy.
Okay. Emotion is critical. Like that is the heartbeat and the foundation of our life right there. And, I don't know why I grew up in an era where feelings were like, tap your feelings down, like get your feelings out of this. Don't let your feelings get hurt. And since I have been coached and, have coached myself, it's like the feelings are so critical to our growth and transformation and into really living that harmonious life. So how does somebody go from, and again, I mean, you and I are more like on the coaching side of things, and so it's like, okay, but if we could give a list, the conscious investor who is listening right now, who says, that resonates with me. I remember times in my childhood where I was told like, don't be so sensitive, just like settle down. Like this isn't a big deal. Get your feelings out of this. There have been a lot of people who've experienced those messages and have turned off their feelings in a sense. And it's scary to reawaken and to tap into those. What is the way for that conscious investor who's hearing this and saying like, I identify with that, Julie and Del, like, I want to live a full life, but I don't know how to safely tap into these feelings.
Yeah. We're given these programs, if you will, when we grow up, these ideologies, these maps, these little road maps as we grow up, and they're not always correct. But because we received them when we were younger by people that we loved and we trust, we assume that is the case. And it sets our thermostat for success at a certain level, right? And, it might be, our success thermostat might be at 70 degrees. And, we might have some really good success. And then we start self-sabotaging ourselves. And we remember something that our parents told us or our brother told us. And we start self-sabotaging our success and thinking, okay, just making up numbers, my mother never made $50,000 a year. I just made $100,000 a year. I feel guilty because I've made more than my parents. And the next year you end up having a bad year and your financial thermostat kicks in and it brings it back down, right? And then there's other times where we do low. We have our success isn't that good. Our financial thermostat kicks in and it brings us back up, our success back up to that certain level that we're comfortable with. And so we have this programming. And the key is to break free from that programming, to break free from the blueprints that we were given. And the way that we do that is through books, it's through education, seeing other people's perspective. It's certainly through coaching as well, because what a great coach does is it shows, a great coach shows you your blind spots or asks
Mm-hmm.
you questions to think about something a little bit differently. And so a coach is there to help you to achieve results faster and maybe even a different way. And so if you feel like you're stuck, you feel like your success thermostat is at a certain level and you want to go to a different level, you want to raise it up. Well, you surround yourself with people that are at that level and above, and that'll help you raise your success thermostat, help you to get out of those mindsets.
I love that. Okay, I'm going to echo that with, since we both love curated content. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening, I'm just letting you know I'm holding up The Power of One More, the hardback version, because I love hardback books by Ed Milet. And he speaks very directly to that. And it's a very supportive book, also very easy to read, very gentle. It's actually very profound, but it's what I would consider a lighter read comparatively speaking. But yeah, like readjusting our perspective of ourselves is so critical. I love that. That also, I just want to throw in there, especially since we've spoken a little bit about partnerships. I think the book, it is by Gottman, is the last name, the seven principles of a happy marriage. I'll put a link. Try to put a link in the show notes. But if you do Gottman search seven marriage, you'll get this book. But he talks about love maps. So this is maybe taking this even full circle, right? Because I've been dwelling on this concept of love maps recently. My husband and I are reading that book together, and the idea is that you're creating these touch points. So like, I realized that on social media, we're creating touch points with people, which aren't necessarily love maps, but they're these connection points that create this path to understand people. We can also do that for ourselves, is what I've extrapolated on my own. I'm like, I think that we can do this for ourselves and create a little map of who we are, our vision board, our, going to our successes, and looking at the evidence, and then looking at who we want to be. All of those things can really work together. I'd love to hear your perspective, because that's like seriously fresh off the press. I haven't shared that with anybody yet.
Yeah, I think we are given these maps, right? And we have certain things that we follow, and we have to be careful. It could be good or it could be bad, right? There could be a certain, maps or patterns. Maybe I should say patterns that I see. We see patterns growing up with how our father treated our mother, or how our mother treated our father. And it's scary because as we are in our own marriages, we start seeing these patterns come up, right? Even as parents with our kids, we're like, yeah, did I just hear my mother come out of me when I said that?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you totally see these patterns for sure. But the key is to, if it's a bad pattern, let's break those patterns. And it goes back to education and action. Those are the two biggest things. You educate yourself, and then you apply what you learn. That's how you break anything.
And then you go back to that gain and gap, and you don't dwell on, well, I didn't do it 100%. I did it 60% or 40%. I did it more than I did it before, and I'm going to do it more next time.
Spot on.
Oh, I love it. Del, goodness, I can't believe I knew. I'm so glad that we hit record when we did. As we start to wind down, I always love to give guests an opportunity. Like, is there anything that you're like, Julie, I really wish we would have touched on this?
I really think the one last thing I would say is that no matter what your background is, no matter where you came from, that is never your fault. How you were born in this world is never your fault, but how you end this world is your fault. And so making those conscious choices, being intentional with your life is key. So no matter where you're at today, the past doesn't matter. It doesn't define who you are. What matters is your goals for the future, setting those goals, creating that intention. Because again, the number one reason why people don't get what they want is because they don't know what they want. Define what it is that you want and go after it.
I love it. The future is your opportunity. Love it. Del, thank you so much for a rich conversation. I appreciate, your time and what the value you're adding to the conscious investor. And I know that people are going to be listening and connecting with you. What is the best way for them to connect with you, to get your book, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to my website, delldenny.com. It has all my information there, from my podcast called the Upgrade Your Life podcast to my book, the High Performance Playbook. You can find it all at delldenny.com. Or if you just go to Amazon, type in High Performance Playbook, you'll find it there too.
Gosh, love it. Conscious investor, thank you so much for listening. Now, this is a lot of really great content. So think about, who is this going to resonate with? Who is this going to support, encourage, lift up? Please make sure that you take a moment and send that text message with a link to this. And make sure, if you haven't already, goodness, we've well over 100 reviews. And I'm so grateful for those of you who've taken a time to review. So please make sure it helps other people find the podcast. So if you aren't part of that, 100 plus club that have left reviews, please make sure you join that club and leave a rating and review over on Apple or wherever you are listening. Until next time, Conscious Investor, I wish you the best. Live big, love bigger. Are you enjoying this episode? Help spread the word by sharing the episode with a friend or family member. Because really, where would any of our lives be without other people sharing great content with us? Help spread the word by sharing on your social platforms and with those you care about. And remember, tag me at Happy Julie Holly.